but to see what's in the room today, to see who's in the room today, and to see the level of opposition to the conversation that we plan to have today is, as Linda said, a sign of our success. We are winning. We are moving forward. We are advancing justice. And we will win. The opposition to this event today was not surprising to me. We live in a country where there are always going to be competing claims, there are always going to be debates, there are always going to be spirited conversations about the right side of the issue and the wrong side of the issue. What was unsettling to me, as Dave pointed out, was the idea that because we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, that we are somehow anti-Semitic. That, for me, was hurtful on the personal level because all of us on this stage have worked so hard to fight anti-Semitism, to resist anti-Semitism, which is a very real thing both in the United States and also around the world. We could even argue in the Trump era that it is expanding and moving in ways that we never even saw before because of the evangelical right, because of historically persistent anti-Semitism, because of all the narratives of hate that are being promoted and promulgated in the media, often from the White House. Because of all of that, anti-Semitism is something that we must take seriously. Yeah. We must. And as a social justice activist, as a person who identifies as a radical, I don't want to be part of any social justice movement that is transphobic, that is homophobic, that is anti-Semitic, that is Islamophobic, that is misogynist, that is patriarchal, that is ableist. No one is free until we are all free. There is no room for any injustice. So that's why I didn't think I did nothing too crazy when I went to the UN. They asked me to come to the UN to speak on behalf of the Palestinian people as a representative of civil society, as a non-Palestinian person. For me, as a black person, as an African in America, that meant that I was trying to stand in a tradition of African freedom fighters who have stood in solidarity with the Palestinian people. I'm talking about Malcolm X. I'm talking about Huey Newton. I'm talking about Angela Y. Davis. I'm talking about SNCC. I'm talking about Ethel Minor. I'm talking about all the freedom fighters who stood up and said we must stand against settler colonialism. We must be unafraid to name it. We must be unafraid to call it out. We must be unafraid to stand in justice and freedom and democracy. We stand in a tradition, and we will not be moved. We will not back down. We will not be silenced. So I'm flying back from Palestine, and I was near the river. Jordan River, I'm just being geographically specific, just to be clear. I don't want them problems, I don't want no smoke. I was near the Jordan River and I was traveling, and I flew back specifically for the UN speech. I landed in New York, I went to my crib in Brooklyn, got dressed, came back through. On the flight there, now I don't write speeches, but I said, you know what, I'm gonna write this one, because I don't want there to be any problems, any controversy. I went and read the previous 2 years. I think Roger had done a couple. I read your speeches. I was like, oh, shit, okay. There's a whole long line of troublemakers like myself. But I said, I will be specific. I will appeal to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We were there in November of 2018, 70 years after the Nakba, 70 years after the great catastrophe. And also 70 years after the establishment of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And what I was attempting to do was say that there is a contradiction between our universal commitment to human rights ostensibly, our universal commitment to making sure that everyone has freedom and safety and self-determination and dignity, and what we see on the ground. When I'm in Khalil, when I'm in Hebron, and I'm looking at children have to go through checkpoints, and I'm looking at the ritual humiliation of being patted and searched at the age of 6 and 7. When I'm in Khan al-Ahmar, and I'm looking at this village of Bedouins, which is about to be torn down after they built schools out of tire and mud because they couldn't get permits. And I'm watching the village be torn down for the sole purpose of settlement expansion. When I'm looking on Via Dolorosa as Christians are honoring the Stations of the Cross, and at the very same moment that they look at their Savior carrying the cross, I'm looking at Palestinian children being stopped and searched and frisked in front of the Armenian hospice. I'm looking at these places. I'm looking at second-class citizenship inside of the state of Israel for African citizens and for refugees and for people seeking asylum. I'm looking at a place where people have a gap between their expressed democratic ideals and their lived practice on the ground.